Welcome to this video in which I demonstrate how I make an Oxford hollow. There are other ways of doing it, but this is how I was taught. I did demonstrate this in the video on rebinding a hard-covered book, but it's hidden away somewhere in a long video, so I thought it would be a good idea to do a separate short video on this process. An Oxford hollow is basically a piece of paper glued together to form a tube, and that is then attached to the spine of the book, and it will then also be attached to the spine of the cover. An Oxford hollow is usually used for case binding, and it's not always used, but it can be a good way of adding extra strength to a spine. I would normally only use it for particularly heavy books, or else for books that I know will be used a lot, such as Bibles or prayer books. Okay, the first step is to measure the width of the spine. So I take a piece of paper and wrap it around the spine from the one ridge to the other. I then take my piece of craft paper, making sure that the grain runs this way, so that we'll fold it with the grain, and I basically measure off that width. And I then fold it across, so that I fold on the marks, and I then wrap it round again, pressing it back so that the next fold will give me the same width. So I'm basically making a tunnel. And I then turn it over and fold it again. And on this fold I'm going to cut it off, which I do with a Stanley knife like that. And I run it down so that I now have my hollow tube. I then measure it to just under, a couple of millimeters under the length of the book. Could do this with a knife, but it doesn't have to be too precise. So I have my hollow that is just shorter than the book. I then glue my hollow closed. So what I normally do is this is going to glue onto here. So I put a paper in there to guard it, and I put glue on here. My brush is starting to fall apart. Yeah. Okay. And I then basically close it, and rub it tight with a bone folder. At this point it's also a good idea to check that it opens properly. Sometimes you can get little bits of glue on the side or at the edge, like here. I don't know what happened. So if that happens, just make sure that it's properly opened and that you don't discover that once it's on the book. Okay. I then take my book block, and the hollow is going to go to just this book block doesn't have fact, this is slightly long, so I'll trim it. This book block is not going to have head or tail bands. If it did, I would put the glue over them so the hollow would come over the headbands to just below the top there. But this one doesn't have. So I'm basically just going to smear the glue in until just below the top of the spine. And I then take, you'll see with your hollow, one side will be double and the other single. And it's the single side that you are going to put glue onto the spine. So the double side will face outwards. So I then position it over the spine. And if it's good, it should be pretty much exactly the same width as the spine. Although in this case my spine is slightly thicker on one end than the other. And you need, at this point, you need to really rub it very well. I find rubbing with a bone folder helps. And I then leave that to dry for half an hour or an hour or so before attaching it to the spine of the book. Once the spine is dry, you need to check that the hollow opens properly. You can look in there. Sometimes it can glue up slightly at the opening, and if it does, you can just use a blunt needle or so to open it up. But this one seems to be fine. So once you've checked that, what you're going to do is, again here I use thick glue, basically glue in until about just a millimeter or two under the top of the hollow. You just basically put glue all over it. And then you also glue the board. You can check roughly where it's going to come to. So you basically put glue just on the spine board to just below where the hollow will come. Being careful not to go into the groove. And when you've done that, you place it in place as you would if you were casing it. And you can round the spine slightly before this, but the process of putting glue on, gluing the spine will actually help to make it more easily roundable because it will be damp. Be careful not to get glue on the actual board. And now you are able to manipulate it into place, because once the hollow is glued to the spine, once the spine is glued, you won't be able to move the boards around anymore. So this is quite an important process, and you then really need to rub it well once it's in the right position. And I then put this between two planks, making sure that I keep it in the right position. Just with the spine protruding. and I'm then going to put a brick on top of it, which is really just I'm just doing that to hold it in place properly, and I will rub the spine. Oops. Rub the spine some more. And you then need to leave that for about an hour or so until it's dry. You may want to just come back now and then while you do something else, and rub it well to make sure that this glues properly, because it's not actually having any pressure on it from anywhere else. Once the hollow and spine are dry, you basically then just case in the book as you would have done. The only difference being that it's now in place, so you don't need to wriggle. There's no point in wriggling it around to line up the cover. And that ensures that the book remains in the book block and the cover remain in the same position. And I now put that in the press and proceed as I would otherwise have done. If you found this video helpful, then please like and share it, and please let me know if you have any questions.